All right. So some final words. Bye-bye. Okay, get serious. How about a story? One of the most inspiring beings I've met on this planet is His Holiness the Dalai Lama. And it's around 1990, I think I was in New Zealand, and I was a minor member of a committee that invited His Holiness for this first visit to New Zealand. And so I got to be fairly close to him, not in the inner circle, but when he visited Wellington, he visited the capital first, which is Wellington, and where our monastery was. He, first of all, made it a point to pay respects to the indigenous people. He was scheduled to give a speech to Parliament or some parliamentary members. But because he related so much to indigenous people, because his Tibetan culture had been pretty much crushed by other forces. And so he would do this beautiful gesture of honoring the indigenous folk in any local area. So I was on the receiving committee, and I had the kata, the white scarf, that is a way of honoring an elder or a teacher. And as he stepped out of his car, I had a chance to offer it to him. I was there, and he just zeroed in on me, just these huge eyes of compassion. And like, I was just totally, you could see he's just totally with me. It's total chaos around us, and everyone's making a fuss, and there's police kind of protecting and all that kind of business. And he's just totally focused on me with these beautiful, beautiful, compassionate eyes. And so then I gave him the kata, he put it back on my neck, and then he focused on someone else, and on someone else. But the way how do you describe it? The central place for that particular group of Maori was called the marae, and the marae is their lodge house, their ancestral land, and all things happen on the marae. So if any person, any dignitary comes into their territory, he's welcomed onto the marae. But the welcoming ceremony is very curious, because it's a kind of, you're coming onto our land, but you be careful. You're coming onto our land, because they're warrior kind of culture. And the way that's enacted, it's a play, but it's a cultural play, which has quite a lot of power. And the way it's done is we had a party of maybe 25 people. We were being welcomed on. So there's some of our monks and the Tibetan community, their monks. And so we gather in front of the gates of the marae, and there's an elderly woman with us, and she starts singing or calling out, because she's one of the elders. And I think in Maori culture, an elder has to bring you on, another elder has to meet you. So she starts calling to her sister on the hill. So it's a low hill, and as her fellow Maori elder is calling, they start calling each other, and we start slowly processing up this shallow, not too steep hill. And His Holiness is just beaming compassion and wowing everyone. But all of a sudden, what appears in front of us, facing us, walking backwards, is a young Maori warrior. And he's all decked out. His chest is bare, and he has a kind of grass skirt kind of affair, and he's got a spear in his hand, and he's sticking his tongue out at us. And what he's doing, he's making threatening gestures, but walking backwards. So the play is, you're not on yet. You can come, but you be careful, warrior culture. So, and meanwhile, His Holiness is saying, this lovely contrast kind of going on. And we kind of go up the hill. And then when we reach the marae, the warrior disappears. And we came into the marae. And then their custom was to welcome someone into the marae. They set up a seating arrangement where there was our party of 30 and then their party of 30 facing each other in chairs. And their party nominated a speaker, and he spoke to the whole group. And then they sang. They're great singers. They're great choral music. Then our party had a speaker, and we chanted. And we did that 3 times. That was the exchange. And that happened, then we all had a cup of tea and biscuits. I didn't have the biscuits. But the speaker for the Maori group was a professor of anthropology or something in Victoria University, I think. And a very, very eloquent man of Maori descent. And he spoke of the kind of genocide of their people and the tragedy of that. And interesting, His Holiness, when he spoke, he was the first speaker. I mean, he spoke of the same kind of history. But what was different about His Holiness is that he had a kind of joy about him. The other man had a kind of great heavy sadness about him, from what I remember. Not that the sadness is bad, it's understandable, but you could see His Holiness had Dhamma, because he was bigger. There was something in him which was larger than Tibetan culture or all his different titles of being the Dalai Lama. And that was so interesting to see, how this being who has endured so much, these people have endured so much, and yet he's radiant, he's truly happy. And then we went up to Auckland, and he was on a radio show, and one of the interviewers, very abrasive, one of those right-wing kind of interview platforms where the guy's totally obnoxious and people love it, and he just insults people. I don't know how His Holiness was drawn into that. Anyway, he kind of challenges His Holiness, says, "So are you angry at the Chinese?" His Holiness looks at him and says, "No." He says, "I don't believe you." And His Holiness just laughed. He said, I know what's happened to my people. I feel the pain, but I'm not going to hold it with anger. That would destroy my heart. And I have compassion. And it was really, really beautiful to see that on television, to see this right-wing obnoxious interviewer just from a very happy being told that, no, there is transcendence, there is compassion. And why I'm going on the story, because I don't know what else to say, but that's one of the reasons. But also in one of his public lectures, I guess it was in Auckland, he if you've heard His Holiness give talks, they're very simple, very natural. And in this talk, he said that compassion was the method. And that really struck me. Yeah, because I guess in the back of my mind, compassion was the goal, more that kind of a thing. Where he said it's the method. I said, "Whoa, yeah, I never thought of that." And it made so much sense to me. And then I watched him, just watching him. He was just this happy Uncle Dalai Lama, just very natural, very beautiful, nothing complicated. Everyone's projecting all manner of powers on him, and he's just very, very happy and natural. And I said to myself, yeah, we can do that. This is possible. So in fact, it left a huge, obviously, I'm still talking about it, a huge impression on me. But contemplate, like, compassion is the method. Well, what does that mean? Well, that means that when I look at someone, I kind of, like, I think in Thai culture, sometimes if a Kuba Jan gives a talk, he says, we are brothers and sisters in old age, sickness, and death. Is that true or not? Sometimes. But we are, we're brothers and sisters in this work that we do. And then looking at someone like I, I talk to a lot of people about Dhamma, and basically I'm always looking, so how do you suffer? Because I suffer this way. And how do you suffer? And that's not a judgment. It's like getting a sense of where their worldview is and what they're doing. And then I can share my own insights. And that to me is like compassion is the method. And to hear another person's perspectives on life, I have to listen. I have to be available. I have to allow them to express themselves. And that is a beautiful, beautiful way to live. Whereas if you think about desire, to live with desire, when the person in front of me is either the person is going to help me get what I want, or the person in front of me is the person preventing me to get what I want, that's a whole different way of relating to people, isn't it? I want this and I'm going to get it. No, you're going to help me or not? That's not compassion. That's selfishness. So rather than metta bhavana being a bhavana that we do, sort of it, as a way of life, it's the way we look at people, and like to pause and to see this is a human being. This human being has needs and all the rest of it. It means we're kind of, I think it's that same idea of making conscious something, like to be in front of a person and just let their persona and psyche and situation come into consciousness. We're doing the same, aren't we, with people, as we're doing just with bodily sensations. And if we allow that to me is what in English we call communion, connection, maybe. I don't know. Communion is a difficult word, but connection, not through my opinions, but through allowing this being to manifest. I may not like the person, that's all right. I may not trust them, that's all right too. It's not a matter of that, but at least I have some kind of connection. And then I keep checking that connection. Right? It might be, I might look at the person's face and I think, they're really suffering. And actually they're really happy. They just have a face that doesn't express it. So I have to wait again. I have to wait and allow it to become conscious. And so the work of compassion is also on ourselves. The method is compassion. So our own suffering, we have to allow it to manifest and say, "Oh, this really hurts," or "Gosh, I'm just not doing well right now," and allow that to become conscious. Let that come into consciousness, and then I think the solutions are there. What we need to do, how we need to respond to life. But if we don't give that a chance, we tend to react either against ourselves and that we shouldn't be. So again, I like these kind of dualistic models of like background, foreground, heart, head, heart, and I think connection and alienation. So when I'm just looking at this person as someone who is going to be instrumental in my happiness, that's alienation. I'm not connected to them, I'm only connected to my own superior needs. Whereas if I allow them to come into consciousness, the sense of separation falls away. There's no alienation. We're still individuals, but it's a whole kind of different way of relating. So consider that, like the Brahma Viharas are so beautiful. Aren't they just the most kind of wonderful, like that this is what should be done by one who is skilled in goodness and who knows the path. They're not doctrinal, they're not even Buddhist, really. There's something, they're human. So when we just remember these values, rather than it being something like some kind of, it's just remembering those values that we already know and we honor. So we have to remember them all the time. So I would certainly recommend memorizing that sutta in English or Pali or Thai, but in a way that's meaningful. And I'll quite often do that. I'll just say it really slow. And it's very calming, but it's also very heart opening. And the more we have those reminders of compassion and so on, they begin to affect our understanding of life, the way we speak, the way we walk, the way we relate with each other. And those are very, very rewarding. So yeah, in conclusion then, thank you for taking care of me. My apologies for the drama, but it's not self and all that. I'm so grateful to Yompung and Vibun and the whole angel team and the yogis online and all of you. So, I do two major retreats a year. One in September with the Ottawa group and one here. Joey's been to both now, both in a row. And it's so very rewarding to both try to express myself and see, can I express the ideas which are significant to me? That's my sort of creativity. This is my canvas. It really is. And so I said, okay, how can I say this which is meaningful and isn't meaningful? So the feedback I get from participants in a retreat, I can first of all, I learn a lot on people have all kinds of insights. I say, oh yeah, I like that one, and I copy it down and then I plagiarize it. I'm not proud. I don't mind. Because I remember we're all plagiarizing the Buddha, right? So why not? So there is this insight is just natural to the human condition if we reflect. So it's very, very rewarding as a teacher, but then just to have these kind of kalyanamitta, to have friends who really love the Dhamma and who are inspired to do this work. That's such a fabulous gift. So many, many thanks, and let's hope that he gets full range of motion by next year. Okay, thank you.